So once again, this will probably not get uploaded to YouTube or Spotify because I'm playing this song. But I thought it was kind of important because this song right now, as most of my life, there's always a song or an artist that like encompasses what's going on in my life right now. And this song just couldn't be more accurate. Summer 2019, June 25th, broken foot. I axed right through my skin into my bone during a fit of sleepless mania. I listen to this song and I think about what it's like to die, because I watched my best friend and the love of my life fade away. And when you love someone that much, you want to know what everything feels like that they go through. And in this case, Rachel didn't have the ability to communicate all of those things in the last couple of days of what she was going through, but I'm always so fascinated by her take on life and her feedback, and I kind of just wish that I could have sat inside her brain with her, so that I know she didn't feel alone physically because I was right next to her and holding on to her, but I wish I could have gone into her mind and communicated with her while she was leaving, because I suppose I just want to make sure that there was no fear. And, well, I think the common thing that we all do and most people do when they have a loved one, I think if someone you love dies, someone you're close to, I think that most people, as a survival mechanism, will compartmentalize the story in their head, and they will create a narrative that allows them to continue living and survive without constant torture or without disassociation with reality. And I think that's a workable mechanism that we all have, but there's a problem with that, in that it keeps you from digging really deep and finding truth, because sometimes the truth isn't so pretty when you lose someone, and you want to wrap up the story in a way that allows you to sleep soundly. And I know that that's not always the case, and there could be some glaring truth that's blatant and obvious that you have to deal with, something along the lines of regret, which brings a terrible amount of torture, really. I'm lucky enough to not have much regret, but of course I'm not without regret. I mean, it's impossible not to be. But everything happened for a reason that year, and I didn't work, and it was, looking back, I certainly don't wish I was working during the time that she needed me. I'm just glad for it all, to be there through all the chemo. She had 72-hour infusions. She would bring a pump home, and we'd spend a full day at the ambulatory center in Worcester while she received her first 8 hours of the infusion, which was usually the oxaliplatin, and that's the heaviest of the chemo cocktail, the 5-FU chemo cocktail that she was on. So I believe she would get the oxaliplatin and irinotecan in the beginning at the ambulatory center while she was being observed, while there was nurses around, especially the oxali, because it causes an allergic reaction. Rachel was allergic to oxaliplatin, and her face would get red, and it would cause her a lot of trauma. The thing that people don't tell you about chemo is that, knowing that she got an allergic reaction to oxaliplatin, which would make her hands red and stingy, and her face red and stingy, and her throat start to close, the doctor would give her a pretty heavy injection of steroids, which also affects your hormone levels in a big way. And so when you get hit with those steroids, it can cause a rush of hormones that can cause panic and anxiety. And so add that to the already traumatic environment that you're in. You're about to receive, the most hellish kind of treatment that kills all of your healthy cells. It's just a very, it just seems like a Zamboni that just wipes everything out. Like, it just feels like that. I don't understand why that kind of treatment still exists. Like, when someone has a disease and you can't, there's no cure, so they've come up with a way to kill all of your cells. It just seems so counterintuitive, because you need those healthy cells to heal. It's really, it's a scary place to be in. And over time, the infusions got harder and harder for Rachel. Eventually, they started injecting, through a clinical trial, oxaliplatin directly into Rachel's abdominal cavity, which was fantastic. I guess there was some decent results on the tumor, but it left the rest of her body exposed. She went through 2 months of that, and during those 2 months, the cancer was not treated outside of her sigmoid colon. So it allowed it to spread more to her lungs and to her lymph nodes. There's another drug, the actual cause of death. Well, the cause of the beginning of Rachel's decline in the end was a hole in her intestinal lining. It was a hole caused by the tumor pressing against the intestinal lining and breaking through, which causes leakage of your waste, of your bowel, of your vial, really, into your body, which is super painful and very dangerous. And so it couldn't be repaired. And the reason why the hole existed and became so prevalent and was and happened, really, what we were told, was the cause of it was a drug, a new experimental drug that I thought was so great from all my research, called Avastin. I read a book about the guy who discovered Avastin, and it's a vascular inhibitor. It stops the growth of new blood vessels, which is the mechanism of healing. Like when you get cut, your body creates new blood vessels, and that's how you heal a cut. So if you had a wound inside your body and you were taking Avastin, then your body isn't able to create new blood vessels to repair that wound. And so Avastin was the cause of that hole in the lining, and her doctor, it's just, the decisions that you have to make during cancer in this kind of situation are, I think when people are really involved, that they tend to do a little research, and then they really push the doctor to go for something that they believe in, because it's all power. It's loss of power and control over the treatment. So once you have a little bit of knowledge and you find out about a drug and you push for it, it's just you trying to reclaim some power over the treatment. But the thing is, you're not a doctor, so you can't. It's so it's hard to do, but you really need to listen to the doctor's advice. Find the doctor that you trust and just go with that, because I was pushing for Avastin, and her cancer doctor, her oncologist, Dr. Ali, who I believe now is brilliant, she took Avastin out of her treatment. And when we went to Dana-Farber and we talked to her oncologist that she switched to eventually at Dana-Farber, he asked why she stopped the Avastin. Now, Dr. Ali was more familiar with what was going on in Rachel's body, because she had been her doctor from day one. And so this new guy, just hearing that they took out Avastin, possibly wasn't so familiar with what was going on inside of her body. And so he suggested to bring Avastin back, which they did. And it eventually caused her to perforate her bowels. So either way, there was no stopping this cancer. It would have done what it's doing either way, what it did either way. But, you go over these things and you go over regret. And really the point of this is, what I'm trying to talk about today is, imagine yourself getting very sick and dying. Okay? Now, do you have someone that you believe will dig through your things to learn more about you and to find out the truth and to really understand your soul, the soul that existed while you were here on earth? Number one, would you want that? Would you want that? Someone to continue to learn from you and find out all of your intricacies and all of your beautiful flaws and beautiful insights and thoughts? Would you want someone to read through your journals, or would you not? That's a question to ask. And number two, if you would like that, do you have that person who would do that? Because many times you think you might, whether it's your parents or your children or your partner, and but sometimes those people do not do that after you pass. It's too hard for them to dig, or they're afraid of what they might find, and they're so maybe affected by grief that maybe they've been told not to dive in too deeply, to try to learn to move forward. Now, that's not something I'm capable of doing. Moving forward is something I'm capable of doing, but I want to learn more about Rachel, and I want to dig. And yeah, I found some things. I found some letters Rachel used to write when she didn't write all the time. She didn't keep a daily journal. She wrote when she was upset. Okay? So this causes some problems for me, because I found a few of her writings that she wrote directly after we had an argument, a bad argument. She only wrote when she really needed to get something out and she was upset. She wrote something once after we got into a fight. And she talked about her tears and how she was crying, and the tears felt like hot lava coming out of her eyes and burning her soul. Now, seeing Rachel cry is the single most devastating sight for me, because early on when I